Welcome to Save As Ability, a podcast to educate and inform you about disability employment issues. My name is David Darkangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Save As Ability. It's David Darkangelo, another episode here. We've got a guest today, a great guest. But before we get to our great guest, we want to remind you if you could please help us out by liking, subscribing, sharing. Sharing really helps us grow, and we can continue to get our message out about disability issues to our community. So we've got an important issue here today. And to help us explain the ABLE Act, we have Adam Hartwell. Welcome in, Adam.
Well, thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Adam is with the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority, right? MIFA.
Yep.
And they generally do like the college loan programs and things. But a few years back, I had a very small role when I was the director of the Office on Disability, but to work with MIFA to kind of install and stand up the ABLE Act here in Massachusetts, which is called the Attainable program, I believe. So Adam's here to tell us all about that today. So welcome in, Adam.
Glad to be here. So ABLE is short form for the Stephen Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, which was signed into law in 2014. And one of the ways that it was put forth is that every state controls their own version of the program with several federal standards. So that's why that almost every state's going to have their own name for it. And here in Massachusetts, we call it the Attainable Savings Program. The idea of the program was to allow people the opportunity to save in a way that had been unavailable to them in years prior, particularly anyone who is on some sort of limiter on the amount of assets they're allowed to hold. For instance, people who are utilizing SSI, have VA pensions. There's a lot of different things that might come into play when it says you're making too much money and therefore you can't receive assistance, which means then you end up being worse off than you would be if you ended up trying to even like start getting a job and pulling yourself out of whatever situation you were in.
Yeah, we've had many programs on the cash cliff or benefits cliff, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And so, yeah, ABLE Act is important. I remember before the ABLE Act existed, my brother, who was a person with a very significant disability, I was the executor of his estate, and trying to help him manage his finances, we ended up having to go get an attorney, spend tons of money on a very sophisticated special needs trust, which is all very intricate,
First party, third party, pooled. You got a lot of choices you got to make. And every time you want to change up how your spending patterns work, but they are an incredibly useful tool, particularly if you've got a lot of money that you need to be able to put in a certain space without impacting those benefits.
Sure. And there still is a place for those with the ABLE Act, but I think the ABLE Act now, you've all made it so available and so easy. Tell our listeners and viewers out there a little bit about how they can get involved, either for themselves as individuals with disabilities or as people within the solar system, maybe the family or the, friends or somebody, guardians of people with disabilities.
Well, once again, you can open an ABLE Act in any state, no matter where you live. So you can open one in Massachusetts if you live in California, or vice versa, and this, that, and the other thing. So you look at the programs that you want. Again, there's federal rules that are in place. So essentially, instead of having like a $2,000 asset limit for SSI, if you're putting money into an ABLE account, it goes up to $100,000 before your benefits are affected. Here in Massachusetts, our partner, our program manager, is Fidelity Investments. So if you wanted to open an ABLE account in Massachusetts, you go to fidelity.com/ABLE and you just follow the prompts from there. It's a very simple process. People are allowed to open them on behalf of someone that they're responsible for. If you have someone who is, either someone with a very significant disability or this side of the other thing, as you may have described for your brother there.
Now for my daughter, we didn't have one for my brother. For my brother, we had the special needs trust, but for my daughter, Isabella, we have an ABLE Act account. And I also set one up for myself, although I don't really make any contributions to that.
Hey, it's a really great program, and it honestly improved almost every year that it's been in existence. They went into functionality essentially in 2017. They were signed into law in 2014. Took them a couple of years to work out exactly how they were going to be utilized. But because they have increased what your contribution limit is almost every year, the ability to roll a 529 college savings program, you can now roll into ABLE permanently. That was done recently. We're past the ABLE Age Adjustment Act, so eligibility is expanding dramatically at the end of this year. And essentially, what an an ABLE account is it's an investment account for what are called qualified disability expenses. The nice thing is that qualified disability expenses, people have recognized that almost all parts of life cost more money if you're living with a disability. So almost everything that is not purely recreation is a qualified disability expense. Healthcare is a qualified disability expense. Assistive technology, including durable assistive technology like wheelchairs, things
Which is
like
great, and that's a
huge.
big delineation from the special needs trust where you can, there's food, clothing, shelter, you can't use it on that stuff. It's
Right.
like all these other very specific rules.
And
So the
specifically, you
ABLE Act,
can do, yeah,
yeah,
we actually got a clarification. All food counts for, you can use it for an ABLE expense. So you can go to McDonald's and spend money out of ABLE account, or you can go to buy your groceries. And it does, and again, money in ABLE doesn't impact your SNAP benefits, doesn't impact your FAFSA if you have a family member who's utilizing it, doesn't impact your HUD housing waivers, doesn't impact VASH if you're a veteran using a HUD housing waiver.
which
There's
is
so many,
huge.
yeah,
And
so
I
many different
remember when we
spots.
first installed it back in 2015 and, talking to the governor about it. Now, these were all concerns, but over the past several years, a lot of that has been worked out. Maybe you can tell our audience where they can go for guidance about all that information.
Well, I'd love everyone to go to, me.com. Can you come see us? We'll talk to you as much as you like. There's also the ABLE National Resource Commission, ABLE NRC. They have a lot of fantastic information. The wonderful thing is because every state is doing this, there's a version of me in almost every state. And we're always trying to make sure that information is getting out there. So I try to write articles. I do webinars very frequently. I talk to groups all over the state. I talk to both state agencies and local parent groups for special needs in the school system. I do, I'll talk to anybody about anything. I'm happy to answer questions whenever I can. And I feel like that's the energy that most people in this space are bringing to it, is that everybody is very available to be able to answer questions when possible.
Yeah, it's great, and that's how we got connected is through one of the webinars you did, and I was like, "Wow, this is very well done, and it's very easy to understand," and, so I think this will build value for individuals. One thing, we do wanna talk a little bit about is the limits and things like that, because it's great that the program exists, but, 2/3 of all people with disabilities, I think, are either at or below poverty level.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the other ways that they can, that individuals with disabilities can get money to actually contribute into the account?
Well, I mean, again, you could be contributing any benefit conserve funds you're doing as well, and also actually even rep payees are allowed to be one of the what are called person with signature authorities, the people who are allowed to open accounts, including organizations. So we've got conserved funds can go into Attainable, which is a big deal because it means that it also means that no one has to do what used to be called a spend down
Right.
all the time. Right, you get to the end of the month, I've got too many assets, and I have to buy something useless immediately in order to make sure that I don't have too much money later. So first off, you're allowed to save the money that you're already receiving, which is huge. The other thing is that it also provides an opportunity for people to have a space where they can save their work income. Should they, if someone has the ability and wherewithal to be an employed individual. And in fact, as an employed individual, you can actually, there's a increase to the contribution limit per year that you're allowed to put into ABLE, because you're allowed to put up to the lesser of your income or the last year's poverty guideline, which is 15,650 currently. And so currently the contribution limit for ABLE is 19,000. So say you're working a part-time job, you're getting $16,000 a year, you would be able to put $34,650 into your ABLE account every year and not have to worry about it impacting any of the other things that you might need to make sure that you keep your housing, keep your doctor, keep your programming, keep your assistance, anything like that. And so it can
Thank you for
provide
that
that
clarification
space.
because
Yeah.
that is like probably when I talk to people about it and they ask me, that's probably the biggest, I don't want to say confusion point, but largest question that people have. Because so many individuals with disabilities uh, fear that they can't work because they don't want to lose their benefits.
Right, and there is there's a separation here, right? Because able is separate from, if you're working, a job where you go to the point where you're working full-time hours and you're earning enough money that you're going to lose your SSI. And I do want to make a clarification because this is a sticking point for me. You never lose your SSI; it gets suspended. And
Right.
that's the thing. I just did it myself, right? But you're never going to lose it. It just gets suspended until you need it again. And let's make sure that that's very clear. But the point is one of the things you can use an Able account for is actually to provide the opportunity to take a chance on yourself in that way. Because if you can
Yes.
save up enough to cover the bills that your benefits were covering and put it in Able, and then you can try working full time. And if it works out, fantastic. Now you got a full time job and you have a little savings. But if it doesn't work out, you can use the cushion because you were allowed to have one for the first time ever to cover those expenses while you reinstate your SSI. And if the condition that is the reason you received SSI hasn't changed and it's within 12 months, generally speaking, I'm never going to say always because
Right.
but
Right.
generally speaking, that's actually a fairly simple process. If you're once again, if none of the conditions haven't changed and it's within 12 months,
Right. And
is
then
what
the
I've been
only
told
other
by benefits
question. Oh,
counselors.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Adam.
no,
Thank you.
go ahead.
There was a delay there. I
Yep.
apologize. The only other question I get oftentimes is, I think people think it's like a traditional savings account, and maybe you can explain that it really isn't. These are investment vehicles, and there's a whole different gradient of you can be high risk and low risk. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, you absolutely can use these as savings accounts, or you can use them for turnaround immediate spending, either way you want to go about it. But it is an investment account. There are 9 portfolios. One of the things that I often recommend people do is you look at those portfolios before you start the process of opening an account, because it gets to be a point where people hit that. I have to pick a portfolio, and then you feel very confused because you weren't ready for that. And then you have to start all over because you want to go and talk to some folk before you do that. But the portfolios range essentially in risk. They run from a money market account, which has nothing in the stock market pretty much. It's short term annuities and bonds and what have you. It's as stable can be pretty much as long as, the economy exists. And it goes all the way up to a very high risk 85% in the stock market, high risk, high reward, but also could lose everything kind of type thing. And there's everything in between, right?
And you're able to split the funds too, right? Put a
Right.
portion here, a portion there.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of folk who just sort of go for one of the moderate levels where you go like 40-50% in the stock market and the rest in those more safer spaces. But you also see a lot of people taking a longer term strategy where you say, all right, I want to be a little higher risk for the next 10 years because after that is when I'm going to really need this money. And then I'm going to pull back to like
Then
a
I'll be more
30%
conservative,
and
right?
be more conservative as it gets closer to what I'm going to actually be spending. And then we also see that with our college programs where we see like people being a little more high risk, through middle school and the beginning of high school, and then they scale it back. So there's not a giant drop possible right before you want to spend it for college. And those programs are very similar in that, 529 college savings programs in the IRS code for ABLE, it's 529A. So it's, one is an investment account for qualified education expenses. The other one is an investment account for qualified disability expenses.
Right.
The only other big thing that people should be aware of is because they are investment things, there are a couple rules. One of the big ones being that you're going to have to give them a day or two when you take money out because it's got to essentially do a small scale trade and then give you the results. So
Right.
you're going to want to ask for the money a couple days before you need it.
It's not a debit card. It's not an
Right.
instant thing.
It's not an instant thing. And the other thing is that there's things like if you want to use money for housing, it has to be done in the same calendar month. So don't take money out on the 29th to pay your rent on the 1st. Take it out on the 25th and pay it before the 30th. So that's because there's a general IRS thing where, funds that come from these accounts need to be used on housing within the same month that they're withdrawn. But beyond that, there's a lot of freedom with the accounts. We see a lot of people being able to really expand their lifestyles, and be able to pull themselves out of more difficult situations, whatever, simply because not even because they're making more money, but mostly because they are able to save the money that they're receiving for their needs when they need them. And additionally, it provides these opportunities for people to explore new opportunities because of it. Because a lot of times there's a financial ceiling that blocks people from attempting different things, including being able to pay for your education, being able to, including lab fees, books, tuition. You can pay for that out of ABLE. Being able to, I could get this good job if only I had transportation, but I've never been able to save up for a car. Well, you're allowed to buy a car with ABLE. You're allowed to pay. You're allowed to buy a house with ABLE. There's a lot of opportunities because you're allowed to save and be able to spend it on things that you need to move your life forward.
Adam, we're just scratching the surface. Tell our people at home here where they can find out more information about ABLE and in Massachusetts Attainable.
Well, please come over to us over at METHA. We'd love to have you. We have lots of articles up there, and I do regular webinars. My name, again, is Adam Hartwell. I'm the Director of Attainable Outreach. Incredibly available to you if you'd like, and we'd love to hear from you at any time and any point.
Send us the links. We'll put them in the description so everybody watching and listening, you can get that information. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. This was great. We could keep going on. Maybe we'll have you back for another episode.
It'll be my pleasure. Happy to do it.
We appreciate you and everything you're doing to lead a better life for people with disabilities. That's what it's all about with the ABLE Act. So thanks again
Absolutely.
for joining.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, great. And for everybody else, it's great being with you. David Darkangelo, another episode of Save Visibility. Help us continue to grow. If you could share, like, comment, subscribe, that does help us out. So this is a great episode on the ABLE Act. We hope you have a great day. For more information about disability employment issues, please visit our website, disabilityemploymentsolutions.com. The Save As Ability podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, our YouTube channel at Disability Policy Expert, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment. Save As Ability lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #TheNewRadio. Again, my name is David Darkangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Until next time, thank you. I hope you have a great day.